themselves. Virtually no accidents and incidents, and hopefully it's the same today. Let's get on with some fantastic competition at Bowness. So back into action with this marvellous Jaguar XJ6 that Jimmy Stewart has created out of a luxurious saloon car into a fierce and wild hill climb car. Quite a big car to hustle up Bowness. Exhaust pipe out of the side, lovely growl from the straight six engine. Threads it through the straw bales and completes the run with a very competitive time. He's followed by the rare Vauxhall Firenze. Lots of them were made, but not many with the droop snoot, the rather streamlined nose. 2.3 litre four-cylinder Vauxhall engine producing something like 210 horsepower. Up into Old Paddock Bend. Firenze reminds us very much of Jerry Marshall in Baby Bertha and then Big Bertha, providing huge entertainment. Now, a lovely example of the typical car that would have competed here in the early post-war days, and then perhaps one of the most exotic cars that's competed here in the revival are these two cars that belong to Robert Bremner. Let's look first at the green Connaught. Connaught was always an underfunded Formula team based in Send in Surrey, and they produced the first racing car they produced was the A-type Connaught, of which this is a wonderful example. It had a modified Lee Francis engine, and compared with the Italian racing cars, the Ferraris and the Maseratis, the Connaught was always underpowered, but was reputed to have wonderful road handling and wonderful brakes. So, although I don't think an A-Type ever won a Grand Prix, they were always up there and provided various famous racing drivers with their introduction to Formula One. Roy Salvadori drove an A-Type Connaught. Many famous drivers cut their teeth. And Robert, you've had the Connaught for a couple of years now. Are you getting the hang of it?
Slowly. It's quite different. It's taking a bit of getting used to. It's my first single-seater, but it's just a magnificent car to drive.
The reputation for good braking and good handling, do you find that's true?
Absolutely. Underpowered, but the handling is peerless. You can keep up with anything. It doesn't matter what it is in the corners, and then the frustrations when you hit the street.
Yes. Rather like the Lagonda Rapier Special that we've just been looking at, pre-select a gearbox, which means you can pre-select. You can decide which gear to go into next. Click the lever, and then remember to push the gear change lever, which effectively is the clutch. The difficulty is remembering what gear you've chosen next, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's where I was saying it's taking me a bit of getting used to, and it's predominantly a pre-selector box that takes a bit of getting used to. It's fantastic when you get it, but if you haven't raced it a wee while and you're a bit cold on it, it takes a while to get used to it again.
You've got a famous driver, guest driving the Connaught.
I do, yes. Anthony Reed's taking it up the hill, so quite looking forward to that. He'll show me how it's done. Anthony,
of course, Scott, went to school near here. Great record both at Le Mans and particularly in toy car racing. And he was here for the first time last year, hopped into the Cobra, drove that, but loved it so much he's coming back. Let's have a look at the Cobra. That's a very different kettle of fish. Cobra was developed from the 2-litre AC Ace made by AC Cars, again down in Surrey. And Carroll Shelby, great American driver and engineer, saw the AC Ace and thought, well, all this thing needs is a great big engine and it'll make the perfect road and race car in the States. And that's exactly what happened. Here's a perfect example of the Cobra. Did this one start as a road car?
Yes, it did. Yes. This one was involved in an accident a few years back and rebuilt. But it's just a fantastic car. Chalk and cheese to the Connaught.
Absolutely. So 5.7 litre Ford engine?
5.7 litre Ford engine. I would describe the Connaught as a triumph of grip over power. The Cobra's a triumph of power over grip.
Absolutely. And on a bumpy circuit, you're hanging on for dear life.
Yes, but it just leaves a magnificent feeling and a huge smile on your face every time you drive it.
Opposite lock round all the corners.
Something like that.
On the road, I'm talking.
I behave myself on the road.
Absolutely. And your son Daniel was the youngest competitor last year at Bowness, and he's going to be driving the Cobra, am I right?
He'll be doing a demonstration run. He was driving it last weekend at Oulton Park for a test and thoroughly enjoyed it. Came out wanting more. I think the most fun thing to drive was his expression.
But Dad was biting his fingernails a bit.
He's going to be faster than Dad very shortly, unfortunately.
That's just the trouble, isn't it? Great. Well, Robert, thank you very much for bringing these two wonderful cars to Bowness.
Thank you.
Paul Robertson has brought this Triumph Spitfire over from Belfast. Spitfire, big competition for the Austin Healey Sprite and the MG Midget, based on the Triumph Herald chassis with swing axle rear suspension, which made the handling really quite interesting on the limit. Here's the TR3 again of James Coulthard, developed from the TR2, slightly more sophisticated, with a four-cylinder engine that powered all sorts of vehicles, including the standard Vanguard saloon and Whisper It, the Ferguson tractor. But a very robust engine could be developed to produce plenty of power. TR2s and 3s competed at Le Mans, and this is an immaculate example. Solid rear axle, independent suspension came later. Typical of the cars that would have competed here at Bowness in the final days of the original Bowness Hill Climb is this beautiful Lotus 22, which has belonged since the 70s to Jeff Hunt, and Jeff has actually got fastest time of the day here on, Jeff, one or is it two occasions?
One occasion, which is 2014, I think. No, 2013. 2014, I wasn't here.
A couple of years ago. The phrase never raced or rallied is often used in advertisements. It does actually apply to this car because it has never raced and it's never rallied. It is only hill climbed.
It's only ever been a hill climb car, and so I've had it since 1973, and I sort of campaigned it quite hard on the hills between 73 and 76, and in 1976 I bought a different car, a 733 March, and I parked this car in the garage, and it stayed there for 21, it stayed in the garage, in a nice dry garage for 21 years, until 1995, when I brought it back out and restored it to what we have here now.
Well, it's absolutely immaculate. It's basically a Formula 3 Lotus, but with a Lotus twin cam engine in the back.
Lotus twin cam, 1598cc, producing about 155 brake horsepower, and it's just ideal. The twin cam engine is just ideal, for hill climb, nice and flexible. No vices, nice smooth power delivery, which is what you want on a hill.
Now you're part of the England-Scottish Challenge this weekend. I have to be strictly impartial, but no doubt you will be competing all out to beat those Scots.
Yeah, well, we shall do our utmost to keep our end up, so to speak, and try and pick up a few points and
points mean prizes. David Scott Ayton with the TR4, a development of the TR3, same chassis but different body, designed by the Italian Michelotti, with a rear windscreen to match the front, and you can put a lid over the top to very quickly keep the rain out. This one pretty much in standard form, not highly modified, but nice and quick, makes an excellent hill climb car, and the TR register is very active. TR4 gave way to the TR4A, and this is a much modified example in the hands of Alistair Muir, with a roll cage, highly modified engine, as you can tell from the exhaust note, using lots of revs, still with the fixed suspension at the back, not the independent suspension. That came later with the TR5, but this is a very rapid car. gets up Bowness in a very competitive 33.08. It's followed by the TR6, the last Triumph sports car with a separate chassis, again a Michelotti body, more highly developed, but now of course with the 6-cylinder engine, fuel injected in Europe, carburetors in America where it produced very little power, and originally with Lucas fuel injection. Lots of people have now converted it into more modern and more reliable fuel injection than the original Lucas. And then Triumph came up with the TR7 on a monocoque body chassis, rather wedgy style, developed by Harris Mann, separate hardtop, although then a hardtop version became available, and with a 4-cylinder engine originally, and then the last few buy a classic car, and the person to talk to is Ross Mackay. And Ross, you've got some lovely cars on display here.
Yes, yeah, no, we do. We have a few cars. We brought 6 along today, a mixture of modern and classics, and yeah, it's a great show to be at. It's a local show too, as we're only maybe about 20 miles away in Morningside in Edinburgh. So yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
The extraordinary thing about classic cars is the way values, or prices anyway, are rocketing.
Yeah.
People regarding them as a better investment than money in the bank. Does that apply to Scotland as much as in the rest of the UK?
Yeah, there's more of a demand down south. There's more people sort of around Birmingham, Manchester, London, but people will travel. I mean, we're always at the airport picking people up from all places, even in Europe. So the internet has made has made the market a lot smaller. Yes. So people just go on and look on Car and Classic and all the other websites, Piston Heads and things like that. So yeah, I think that's probably why the prices have increased, and yeah, people get a lot of them more enjoyment. You know, they've got pensions out there, and and they don't see anything of that. But if they can take that out now and put it into a car, enjoy it at the weekends, polish it, clean it, show it off, and yeah, that's taking a lot of enjoyment.
Is it getting more difficult to find good cars that you can then make a profit on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the hardest part of our job is to find good cars, and yeah, you don't want to get desperate and start selling cars that are if buts maybes. They've got to be right. My father's always taught me is never try and sell a car, just have the car correct. Yes. And then you just sit back and someone will buy it. Yeah. So yeah.
And does Bowness provide you with a good footfall, lots of interested buyers?
It's just nice to. I mean, it's very rare that we get these cars out, and it's nice to show them off, even though people are not going to buy them, or they can enjoy them and see them, touch them, and sit in them. And actually, this morning we just sold the white XR2. So a guy in Manchester who's been looking for ages and couldn't believe his eyes. And yeah, so it was nice to get his dream come true.
Okay, well, when we go off air, we'll talk about doing a deal.
Absolutely, yes.
Have a great weekend, Ross. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Here's Bill Dalgetty in one of the very few remaining Cavalier sports hatches. Bill says this car is almost standard, apart from motorcycle carburetors and various other modifications, and more are planned for later on. Bill looks down, something's gone wrong, and he has to pull off to the side. It's actually a broken throttle cable. Jeff Mansfield follows in the Jaguar Cougar Special. This actually is the prototype Cougar, built by Crossthwaite and Gardner, and owned for a while by motoring journalist and commentator Simon Taylor. And then Cougar put them into production in kit form. You could buy a kit, get a Jaguar engine, and off you went with a very lurid sports car. But Jeff has to come to a halt in the courtyard, red flagged, because the Vauxhall Cavalier is still in the way. But he'll get another run pretty soon. So marshals gather around the Cavalier to rescue it, while Jeff proceeds slowly up to the top of the hill. Welcome again to Bowness. You were here last year, and you enjoyed it so much you were determined to come back. But We've seen you in chevrons, we've seen you in modern touring cars, we've seen you in Cobras. We've never seen you, I think, in a 1950s Grand Prix car.
No, I couldn't miss the opportunity to come up on this lovely weekend back to my home country. I went to school in Torryburn in Fife many years ago. I always jump at the chance to come back, but especially when it's this event, on a day like today, driving a Connaught Grand Prix car, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
It doesn't. Look at the weather we've got. Typical Scottish summer weather.
Absolutely. It's how I remember it.
Absolutely. Now the Connaught is it's a bit different from driving a 1950s Grand Prix car. You've got a pre-selector gearbox to deal with, which isn't so easy. Can you describe what a pre-selector actually does?
Well, I mean, first of all, the owner, Robert Bremner, of this fantastic car, I mean, I'm very grateful to him to allow me the opportunity to drive this car. It's got a pre-selector gearbox, so basically you select the gear that you want to be in, but the gear change is made on the moment you actually depress the clutch. So if you're in first gear, you want to change to second. As soon as you take off, you pre-select second. It stays in first gear until you dip the clutch for the first time, and it automatically changes up. I can't understand why road cars aren't built like this.
But it means that you've got to remember in advance what gear you've selected next, and it might be quite easy to get it wrong. And suddenly you wanted fourth, but you've actually selected second.
Well, you really do have to plan ahead. I got a little bit lost, actually, as to which gear I was in.
Yeah.
I think I pulled the lever too hard and it jumped up 2 gears. So I came into the courtyard sort of popping and banging a bit.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, once you get the hang of this gearbox, it really is highly effective.
Yeah. Not much chance to experience it up Bowness, but the Connaught reputed to have great brakes, great road holding. Have you found it so far a pretty forgiving car?
Well, that second run, I actually pushed it a little bit, and it really talks to you. It's very predictable, the brakes are good, the steering is accurate, and you know, it doesn't do anything nasty. It probably helped by the fact it hasn't got a huge amount of power.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's about 140 horsepower, but I think it's a great little package, and I can understand why the car was so successful in period.
Yeah, exactly. Well, folks, I think we should all register our appreciation for Anthony to come up to Bowness. He's enjoyed it, we've all enjoyed it. Actually, lovely to see you. See you next week in Cobra and Goodwood. I'm looking forward to that race particularly. I bet you are as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I share Robert's almost identical example with him in some of the races like the Silverstone Classic. His car actually handles better than the car that I'm going to be racing next week. Okay, the car I'm going to race next week is lighter and has got more power, but it's much more difficult to drive. So I'm taking away a few tips from this weekend.
Not only tips for the springs, I've heard.
Yes, I can't say too much, but I think it could make the difference next week. The car, you know, it's a front-running car in the RAC Tourist Trophy race, which is the blue-ribboned event of the weekend. Bonhams have valued this year's grid at in excess of 150 million quid. That's the value of the cars, and it makes it the most expensive grid of cars in motorsport history, I believe.
You told me the secret of the springs. Please, nobody mention it to anybody. Nobody knows about it.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely great to see you. Thanks very much for coming. See you next weekend. Folks, I think a round of applause for Anthony Reid. One of our few lady competitors at Bowness this year, Margaret Adey, in the Porsche 911T, which is her regular shopping car. Amazing to think that the 911 was launched more than 50 years ago, and Margaret is a 911T, which was the touring model of the 911, not quite as quick as the 911S or the 911E, but still a very nice and swift car. Bob McGillivray with a much modified MGB, looking for all the world like the works MGBs that MG raced at places like Sebring and competed in European rallies. MGB, a hugely successful sports car, MG's first monocoque sports car, sold like hotcakes for a long time. Before General Motors took over Vauxhall, they were renowned as a manufacturer of expensive, large and sporty cars, and an early example of a typical pre-General Motors Vauxhall is the Prince Henry, which was designed by a guy called Lawrence Pomeroy Sr. His son wrote lots of books about racing cars and wrote for the Motor magazine. But the Prince Henry, actually it's Prince Heinrich of Bavaria, he instigated a sporting trial over a series of days in Germany. And the Prince Henry Vauxhall then led on to the famous Vauxhall 3098, which was really one of the major competitors for the Bentley in the 1920s. And the 3098 and the Prince Henry are renowned as being some of the fastest and nicest handling cars of their period. So very nice lightweight touring body, and owner of the Prince Henry is Alistair Lockhart. Alistair, have you had the car for donkey's years?
About 15, yes.
15 or 50?
15, no.
15,
yes.
no.
Took me 10 years to collect the bits, put it together, and then it's been running for 5 years.
Did it come back from Australia?
Yes, it did. Yes. It and its first appeared at Shelsley Walsh in 2010, which was the centenary of the Prince Henrys going across to Prussia to succeed in the Prince Henry trials. Right. That car then came back. There were a team of 3 cars. They came back to the UK and they fitted one with a streamlined body, took it to Brooklands to try to beat the Class E 100 miles an hour. And for the first 3 attempts it failed, and then in October, in desperation, they took all the oil out of the rear axle and it shot round at 100.4 miles an hour. But it was the first car in the world to exceed 100 miles an hour in Class E records, which is a 3-litre engine basically.
And then the back axle seized.
They got it back, I think.
And this one in Australia, I suppose it was a truck on a farm somewhere.
Could well have been, yes. It's all A11 bits, which is how Prince Henrys were made.
Yes.
Most of the cars were turned into standard A11s, but the odd one, they used exactly the same transmission and engine, but just fitted it into a narrow, short, light chassis, and it was the same.
So the standard Prince Henry would do what, sort of 85, 90 miles an hour?
Yes, I took this one across to Sweden in 2012 to celebrate the centenary of the Swedish reliability trial, and that's why this car looks exactly like the one that Kidner drove then. And we went from Gothenburg to Stockholm and Stockholm back in 4 days, and it was running along at 60, 65 all day without really missing much of a beat. And they were good for about 75 miles an hour. In 1912, Vauxhall introduced the D-Type, which had a 4-litre engine, and that was the one that went on to be so successful as a staff car. But they made 55 of the 3-litre cars, and then they put the 4-litre engine in, and they made another 150 of those, and they were good for 90 miles an hour, and a really rather different car. It's a slightly beefed up car and with a bigger engine.
So all that history, half a mile up Bowness, is no great challenge for it?
Not a lot, no. No, not a lot at all. No, and with a bit of luck, tomorrow night it'll drive back to Selkirk. I shall drive it back to Selkirk.
I'm sure it will. Lovely. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much.
It ended the first lap at Nürburgring a minute and a half ahead of all the opposition, who couldn't believe this little car could go so quickly. Has a twin cam Lotus engine in the back, and then onto single-seaters with the Mallock of Scott Goodfellow. Arthur Mallock made Clubman's cars, and then a few of them had the mudguards and lights taken off, and even raced in Formula 3. And the owners of sophisticated rear-engined Formula 3 cars rather scoffed at this rather square little front-engine thing until it started beating them, because they were always incredibly quick. Scott Goodfellow over the line in the Mallock. Now a Nike, very rare car, the Nike Mark 7 of Neville Alderson, down in Holdsworth in Devon. Ken Nichols made the Nike chassis, made lots of them for Formula Ford. This one, of course, sports racing. And Neville has competed in this car at all sorts of hill climbs, including the Oronvilla hill climb in Switzerland, up a mountain pass. Nice handling, very rapid little car. Competition for the Lotus 23. Here's Jim Payne in the Fairley Mercury, owned by Alec Brown, who we've seen driving the 1911 Prince Henry Vauxhall, and Jim is following that lady up the hill. One of the great ways of going vintage car racing is to take an old pre-war saloon car and take the body off. The body's probably rotten anyway. Take the body off, make it much lighter, and create a vintage racing car. And that's exactly what Dennis Jenkinson did. Dennis, as we all know, was Sterling Moss's partner in the 1955 Mille Miglia in the Mercedes, but Jenks was always interested in creating interesting cars. And here's a typical example, this lovely racing car based on the Lagonda Rapier. The Lagonda Rapier was quite a big saloon car, quite a heavy saloon car, with a little 1.5 litre engine, quite a sophisticated engine, twin cam engine. And Jenks said, well, let's take all the weight out of it and supercharge the engine, and we'll create a nice racing car. And that's exactly what he did. But Rod, it's much nicer now than when Jenks had it.
Well, yes, it started off as a 1935 car. It was a sports, just a normal Rapier sports car with a listening body, and then of course they took it in, and the whole idea was to base it on a 4CM Maserati, because Jenkinson had written the history of the Maserati brothers too. He had a great respect for their engineering capability.
Yes.
And he said at the time that if British engineering had taken Italian flair into account, they'd have ended up with a different racing car, and that's what he wanted to try and do before his death. And this is the full effect of what he did. It's a twin overhead cam. It's driven through a torque tube which drives through there, and as you said earlier, it has a supercharger on it. The interesting thing is it is a pre-selector gearbox, of course, which was invented in London in the 1930s. But the really interesting point here is that the drive goes underneath the driver to a drop box at the back, and then comes up by sprockets to the back axle, very similar to what they did in the Maserati, and that gives it a greater flexibility with gears for different types of event.
So you can't change the rear axle gears on the run, but you change them between meetings.
Absolutely, if you wish.
And did the Lagonda Rapier have a pre-selector box as standard?
Yes, it did.
Was that a Wilson?
It was. That is quite correct. And as this one is, this one in fact is a Siddeley box of 1934.
Right. And the standard Rapier engine only produced, what, 80 or 90 horsepower?
Yes, if you were very, very lucky. I mean, they started off as an 1100cc, went to 1500 at 1496, and you were lucky. I had one, and I was lucky if I got sort of 55, 60 out of it.
Then with the blower, what does that boost it up to?
I get here, we've limited this, and we get to about 140, something of that order.
And Rod, you hill climb it. We've seen it often enough at Chelsea Wash. Do you race it as well?
Yes, we have raced this, although I have stopped racing this car because I race another car, but I use this principally as sprinting now and hill climbing.
Well, it's absolutely immaculate, beautifully prepared, rebuilt and maintained, so joy to see static, even more of a joy to see running.
Well, that's very kind of you, thanks. What it is finished on, the colour here is the same silver as the 3SLR Mercedes that he and Moss had in the 1955 Mille Miglia, and it's the same colour, and the 722 is the symbolic number of the 22 minutes past 7 when they left Brescia that morning, and that's in the same burnt orange, and he called it the Rapierati, for as we've just discussed,
yes.
But I've renamed it the Jenks because as a token of appreciation what he did over the years.
Now, William Millard in the Fisher Alfa Romeo Monocoque Farm Special, we saw another yellow Jack Fisher Special. He made half a dozen cars in his works in Edinburgh. Beautifully constructed monocoque on the Farm Special, recently bought by William Millard, who seems to be really getting the hang of it. Alfa Romeo engine in the back. Malcolm Wishart, who made fastest time on Saturday in the delicious little Lotus 41C, car built for Formula 3, but also could race in Formula 2. Malcolm's has got a twin cam engine in the back. He's been circuit racing also in a Formula Junior car, but a great exponent at Bowness. Let's see if he can make fastest time of day. Get a race car and you need a trailer, and the person to talk to in this neck of the woods is Alistair Finlay. And Alistair, business booming, lots of racing, lots of trailers.
Yes, we're doing very well. Like so this weekend we've got the paddock where everybody's using a trailer. Lots of interested enthusiasts visiting yesterday and today, who all, or so many of them, have a desire or a need for a trailer, a use for a trailer. And yeah, we've been very successful. So, yeah.
Trouble is, trailers don't really wear out, do they? Once someone's bought one, that's it for life.
They last too long. They're too well made. But people tend to change cars as many times as changing cars, or as cars become more valuable, going for the bigger enclosed trailers, the race boxes,
Sure.
so that they can discreet transport, hiding the vehicle, keeping them away from the weather. But there's always somebody changing. There's always new people coming in, and as regulations change, people are having to keep up and buy something new. They're concerned about being stopped on the side of the motorway and things like that. So no, we're doing well this year. So yeah.
And a lot of safety regulations affect the design. Where are these made?
These trailers are made in Daventry, so they're UK built. Woodfords are a very good, long-standing manufacturer of trailers. They produce a good few hundred trailers every year. We have between 5 and 6 trailers every week of them, ranging from general car trailers, which are supplying to the motor trade, through to all forms of motorsport.
Including motorcycles?
We do a few motorcycle trailers, not a big thing. We do one model which is a 3-bike trailer, although we can do the adaptations from the bike trailer onto any of the car trailers. So we have some customers who do a bit of both, and they'll have a big car trailer with a full floor and have the motorbike cradles fitted to it so they can shift a bike.
And they're all galvanised? Does that keep rust at bay?
It does, yeah. That's another thing that makes them last longer and longer. I mean, even down to things like the axle beams are now galvanised. So everything's galvanised, plated, and yeah, it keeps it looking good for years to come. Always a good investment, because if you buy a trailer just now that's a couple of £1,000, in 10 or 15 years' time, by the time you've had a few little bits of price increases, and there's always such a demand. It's a psychological thing. People want to buy a second-hand one, but your £2,000 trailer in 10 years' time will probably still be worth £1,700 or £1,800. So good investment in low ownership cost.
Yeah. Does technology move on and other developments in suspension and brakes?
Things for years now they've all had the auto reverse brakes, but things like the tyre technology, so we can use smaller tyres to get lower ride heights. The suspension systems are all, we use Alco axles. Alco are the largest manufacturer of axles in Europe. Things like going on, we're sort of split 50-50 just now between standard lights and LEDs, but I would think by the spring of next year everything will be full LED lights, which are all proven more reliable. The classic thing, the trailer lies for weeks or over the winter, and someone, the last thought is the trailer. Can't get the car ready, we're going racing, we need to do engines and this and that, and it's like, plug the trailer in to go somewhere and the lights don't work, just annoying thing. So by adding LEDs, make things more reliable, and keep up with the times.
Sure. And is this the perfect? It's a lovely place. Is this the perfect place to do business?
This is a good place. I think that we've a good mix of customers, as I said, with the guys in the paddock who are all using trailers. And then there's a real good mix of enthusiasts who, again, are all here today maybe with cars. They've all got cars to show, to shift. But this seems to draw quite a mix of customers, whereas if you go to a circuit meeting, you've, other forms of motorsport don't go to circuits, other guys don't go to rally and whatever. But with this, it seems that you've got circuit guys here, you've got rally guys here. Quite a mix. It's such a good event that it draws people from all sides of motorsport and vehicle interest enthusiasts to come and see it. So yeah, we've we had a good day yesterday, and I'm sure we'll have an equally good day today.
Well, we've got the perfect day from a weather point of view. The crowd, I think, is going to be huge. I hope you do big business. Alistair, lovely meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lots of interesting cars while we were talking to Alistair. Now, the Formula V of Chris Spencer. Formula V never really took off in this country. Big in the States, Beetle engine and front suspension. Takes us to another break. Litre straight six twin cam Jaguar engine, of course. You remember Jeff got red flagged when the Vauxhall Cavalier stopped just beyond the finishing line. So he gets another run through Croyat Bend up to Old Paddock into the sunshine of the courtyard, and a neat line through the courtyard, no dramas at all. Jeff takes his lovely car over the finishing line. He's followed by another of our lady drivers, Gesa Walker, in the Lee Francis Hyper. Lee Francis in Coventry, very successful manufacturer after the First World War, and during the 20s and 30s made some rapid sports cars, raced very often at Brooklands and places like that. And Lee Francis struggled on as a company into the 50s, trying to compete with Jaguar in Coventry, but gradually, as so many car manufacturers, smaller manufacturers did, Lee Francis had to give up. Shame, they were always very nice cars. Now the lovely D-Type, driven by David Barnett. I made the mistake of saying the Le Mans 1956 and 57 were won by Works Jaguars. They weren't, of course. They were won by the little Scottish team Écurie Écosse. And indeed, in 1957, not only did they win, they came second as well. Écurie Écosse, based in Murchison Mews in Edinburgh. And this is the replica of the car driven by Henry Taylor that was run by the Border Reivers. We talked earlier to Russell Patterson about the support that Morgan are giving to racing nowadays, and he's doing a demonstration run in the ARV6, this special Morgan developed for racing. Much stiffer bodywork, no doors, Mustang V6 engine giving plenty of power and massive performance. You can see how it differs from the standard cars by the dashboard, the roll cage over the top. Looks wicked in matte grey, and what a great success Morgan are having with their race series. Robert Brenner trying to get the Cobra up the hill in less than 27 seconds, really chucking this big car up Bowness, suspension working full time. Watch him in the courtyard, he almost loses it. Wow, gathers it together. Has to brake a little bit, might have cost him a tiny bit of time, and over the line. Hops out of the Cobra and into the Connaught. Very different kettle of fish. 2-litre Lee Francis engine, producing about 140 horsepower. This car raced in historic racing by Alan Cottam, with great success against the Maserati 250Fs, Cooper Bristols and the like. Don't forget that in 1952, when this was a Grand Prix car, Grand Prix were for the 2-litre Formula 2, and Connaught went on to become the first manufacturer to win a Grand Prix for Britain in 1955. Well, what do we get? Fastest time of the weekend, Malcolm Wishart in the lovely Lotus 41. Malcolm, that was a storming final run.
Well, Chris, thank you very much indeed. As you know, the pressure is always on throughout the day, and I think I probably did relax a little there and enjoyed the run, and it was quick, so it was really good.
Well, I was watching through courtyard. It was smooth and quick, perfect line. And the time 26:99 into the 26s. How about that?
Absolutely delighted. It was a personal best for me, so I'm really pleased. But one more competition, Robert Brown on the cover pushed me all weekend. It was very hard, and many others. And it was just a great competition all told, and the track has got better and better.
And Bowness gets better and better. What a meeting.
It's a fantastic place to be, and I think the people make it, the varying cars we get make it so good, and just the whole atmosphere is just wonderful. So I think it's a tremendous place for people to come to.
And we've had the England-Scotland Challenge. I don't know the result yet, but
nor do I. I'm afraid.
no, we'll find out very soon. But it's a nice added feature to the event.
Indeed, I believe it was 1934 was the last time it happened, and I don't remember that, to be fair, but it was
slightly before our time.
Not to you.
No, not quite. Malcolm, congratulations, and congratulations I'm sure we share with the organisation. They do such a fantastic job. Let's hope next year is as good or even better.
Indeed, I think just to close on this, I thank the organisers, the marshals who've done a wonderful job, and all the sponsors who've done a great job here.
Good.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your time and your commentary. It was also great.